Julia House. All right, so we have a special treat. A very special treat today. We found the Bad Mojo bonus content DVD that's included. If I can pull up the thing here, it's included in the drive.
The Redux version.
So what I'm going to do is we're gonna have a look at this bonus content. We're going to try to provide some actual commentary instead of just being. I don't want us to be React streamers here. You know, I want us to actually add some stuff to this.
Okay.
Especially considering that I've actually got Michael Sommers on the horn, he plays. It was Roger, yes.
Yes, Roger.
Roger
the
and
main
young
character that turns into the cockroach.
Yes. Well, you know he also played young Eddie in the scenes where you have young Eddie. He played young Eddie as well.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So he'll give us some insight onto our burning Bad Mojo questions. But let's see if we can answer some ourselves using this bonus content. We have what appears to be the exterior of the bar, which we see only during, I guess, the intro and the outro.
Right, yeah.
There's the locket in front of the bar. Pretty cool. All right, building. Isolated, urban waterfront. Oh, San Francisco. I think we determined that on the certificate of death, though.
And then when Eddie went to try and kill himself, he was on like the Golden Gate Bridge.
But it was like blue, though, wasn't it? Or it must have been the filter on the video itself. What the heck? Wait, is this the location where it was shot?
No, it looks like a reference. No, because the exteriors were CG.
Yeah.
That's just like a reference photo.
Was this the exterior hallway? I guess we never went there. I wonder if that was planned, but we never got to go there. Oh, this is like scripts.
Some scripting.
Wow, Roger looking cool, man. That's not exactly how it ended up. in the game. I gotta give it to him. Michael really chewed the scenery when he was shooting his shots. You know what that means? Did
really going for it.
Really hamming it up. Like he's giving it 110%. Oh, okay.
This would have been useful to have while we were playing the game. Yeah, and I wonder why the cockroach was so big when you're in the sewers.
yeah. When you're down in there. Well, maybe they're just little tiny pipes. You never know.
Yeah, those would be incredibly tiny pipes. Yeah, see, if they're that little, then it makes sense.
I'm glad that this didn't happen.
Was he supposed to have a cockroach girlfriend?
It looks like a nun, dude. Or is that the Oracle? Is that supposed to be his mom?
I'm not sure. It's very, very odd.
Okay, hold on. This is the layout.
That would be Eddie's room, wouldn't it? The bed.
Yeah, that's Eddie's room. So the door's here. Oh, so that's how he goes, like, when he grumps out and he goes right to the bathroom.
Right, yeah.
Then this is the stairs down. Yeah, that's about right.
The hole in the wall.
Where the Rat King goes.
Yeah, so this was in the beginning in Eddie's room.
But this actually, it ends up getting kind of flipped, I think, because you end up going... Yeah, this is very different.
Yeah, but it's the general idea. You have to go in through the little roach hut, and the spider web and the lit cigarette up there in the top right.
And the rat on its side that bites you.
Oh,
okay, wow. The trash can. This is the trash can maze.
Yeah. This is really cool to see that how it was planned out, because when you're playing it and you're just looking at it screen by screen, it can be very confusing.
But I think that's kind of the point, because you're small. You're like a little rat, you know?
Right, yeah.
A little roach.
But seeing it blown out from a distance and how they have it planned out, that's really cool.
The top of the desk, where you go to the file, and then this takes you to the electrical box.
Where you make the coins fall out of the mattress.
It looks like they had planned for the electric blanket from your room to be in Eddie's room.
So it's kind of interesting to, I guess, like as a creator, you would kind of hang on to all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of interesting for such an obscure game to have all of this stuff available. But, so I'm looking at, obviously game sales are very different today than they were in 1996 when this game originally came out.
Okay.
I was looking the other day at the Bad Mojo Wikipedia page, and they said that they estimated that the game sold around 200,000 copies, which in today's market would be like, maybe a somewhat of a cult hit indie game sells about that much. But if you're looking at 1996 in video game sales,
In numbers, yeah.
In numbers, yeah. So the best-selling, according to Wikipedia, the best-selling PC game in 1996 was Myst, and it sold 850,000 copies.
So this game did pretty well.
Yeah, for the time, it seems like it did pretty well.
The thing though, back in the day, is that you would walk through stores and they would have the PC game section, and the game box had to grab you. That was the piece of the advertising. Because there was this one game that I ended up buying years later, which was, Alice.
Yeah, so the first one was just called Alice. There was a sequel, Madness Returns was the name of the sequel.
Yes,
Madness Returns.
American McGee's Alice Returns. That box, I don't know what it was about that box that, like, captured me. But I would, like, read the back of it every time I went to the store. Bad Mojo also... Like, once I had already played it, but, like, it had, like, the eyeball with the roach in it, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's what the box art was. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just remembering it wrong, but, yeah, that was how you got into these things. You were like, what the fuck am I looking at right now? And I feel like that's a big portion of what Bad Mojo did. Trail of Ants. Is this, like, the CGI blockout? The bathroom? I think the drain ended up getting moved farther away, if I remember right. And also, the razor blade slot was inside of the mirror.
Right, yes.
Ooh, condom machine. Nice. Okay, this is the bottom of the, Wait. Was there supposed... This looks like electric.
This is where you go and turn the oven on, right?
No, because this is the danger high voltage. Was this supposed to be the original electric puzzle?
There was a puzzle like this.
Well, this was... It looks like maybe this concept was reused for the bottom of the oven.
Right.
I think this is reused for the bottom of the oven, but this concept art depicts electricity. See, because here's the little, like, meter. You can see electricity. There's a meter here with, like, the sparks and stuff. And here's the danger high voltage. So I think they ended up reusing.
Okay, yeah, they must have repurposed it.
And I bet you money, if you look at here, there were sparks that would have killed you, like, on a timer. So it looks like there was, like, a dodging portion where you had to go past these, like, zones.
You're probably right. This is Roger's room.
And it looks like originally you were in a much more leaky, basement-y place, but he ended up kind of cleaning it up and having a better, nicer place. Oh, that's it. That's all the concept art. All right.
Very cool.
Very neat. Next up we have... All right.
The concept.
Well, we knew we wanted to have a graphically rich game, but we also knew that the load times for CD-ROMs was a huge problem. So how do you load these graphically rich screens and not have...
Wait a second. Did he say huge or huge?
This was a huge problem. So
huge.
How do you load these graphics? So we figured that if we had a really small sprite-based character...
So... Not only that, this is why it kept glitching on the modern PC, because it was showing just the updated sprite, and it was erasing all of the backgrounds. That's why we kept having that load problem.
It turned out that we all had some pretty harrowing cockroach stories. The president of Drew Pictures, Drew Huffman, and I both grew up...
Drew Huffman. He was the one that led up Iron Helix that I hope that we can play very soon. I mean, I have cockroach stories. I think everybody has cockroach stories. I'm pretty... terrified of cockroaches.
Yeah, I had one recently.
Oh God.
Cockroach-infested households.
I've never lived in a cockroach-infested house, luckily, though.
I remember routinely waking up at night as a child with cockroaches crawling on my face.
That has happened to me. Now, I will say, it wasn't because of squalid conditions. I lived out in the woods of Georgia, and there's just... They live outside in the trees, and in the wintertime, the house is warm, and it's cold outside, so guess where they go?
Yep.
They were always in the bathtub, they were always in the kitchen sink, they were in the stove, they were everywhere. I mean, there were just cockroaches all over the place. Drew had several harrowing cockroach stories, but one of the most interesting and hilarious and also disgusting was the fact when he woke up with just an agonizing headache in the middle of the night that he thought was a brain tumor. And he heard this, the way he describes it, like the sound of a kettle drum in his ear. And he was rushed to the hospital by his mother, and in the emergency room they discovered that he had a baby cockroach in his ear. This thing is like microscopically small. It's as big as a pinhead, if you've ever seen a baby cockroach. And this thing was dancing around Drew's eardrum, pounding on it, causing him just great pain. They had to extract this tiny cockroach out of his ear with a, crazy forceps or whatever. And, we just laughed uproariously at that. And we ran around the table that day, and everyone in the room had some sort of harrowing cockroach story. I think Drew's infestation might have been a little bit worse than ours. He told a story one time about how he went to the beach with his family on a vacation, to get away from it all. And they took all these wonderful snapshots of the family on the beach, and they were really, quaint. And him and his mom and his brother digging sandcastles and the whole thing. And when they developed the film, this crazy thing happened. There were these silhouettes of cockroaches on the photographs themselves, and they were crystal clear. The cockroaches were living inside of his camera.
Oh God!
Every single picture had these silhouettes of cockroaches, sort of bordering these shots of like kids with their arms around each other and laughing and grinning. They've got like popsicles in their hands. It really, I don't think people would even believe it if you put that in a movie. And we began to think, what? All people have had encounters with cockroaches.
They say that relatability is the key to humor and storytelling. And, you have to have some sort of relatability, be it constructed or, otherwise, in order for you to enjoy a story. So I'm feeling like that cockroaches, they hit on a pretty good idea that cockroaches are fairly universal.
Right. And it's also interesting that basically what he said was the whole genesis of the game came from we needed to make a game with a small sprite so that the loading screens wouldn't be a detriment to the game. Yeah. So the whole genesis of the game comes from the restrictions that they would have to work around, and everything else got built on top of that.
When you go back and you listen to some of the stories of like game developers and the things that they had to do to make games work back in the day, there's restrictions that are just not in place anymore. And I feel like a lot of that magic has been lost. I mean, not to say that new games aren't good, but there is a magic of restriction that creates ingenuity that we don't see anymore.
Right, yeah.
I have a complaint.
What's up?
It did have the edge we were looking at.
Right here. So whoever made this video for DVD did poor interlacing. Do you notice how it's doing... So it's doing line-by-line interlacing, and you can see stripes when things move and when there's sudden changes. So watch when the white dips up. You can see it has lines. It has horizontal bars. Watch.
We began to think,
you see it?
Yeah.
So it's just an encoding issue that I learned in animation school.
I talked to entomologists at Purdue University who specialize in cockroach abatement.
You got to respect these animals. They can take a lot. They're incredibly resilient, and I think that they're gross, but they're also kind of majestic in a way.
I mean, the game was originally going to be this funny thing.
The game was about kind of being gross, and it was meant to be sort of a parody.
And they were going to.
Well, they were talking about going to talk to the researchers and stuff. I definitely think there was a lot of love put into the backstory and they wanted to make the game good. And I know that we talked recently about how trash games could be at the time, and so it's clear that they put a lot of thought and a lot of love into making sure that it ended up as good as it did.
We tied the cockroach to a guy who gets turned into a cockroach, and because of that, we wanted to know why. Why was he turned into a cockroach? What were what's the point of this whole thing? And ultimately, we referred to like Joseph Campbell and a hero at the Thousand Faces and put him on a quest.
One of the classic hero's quests is the son's search for the father. He doesn't understand who he is, where he comes from, or how he got the way he was until he turns into a cockroach. As a cockroach, he gets to look at things from a point of view he couldn't look at it from before.
Although, I will say, during that game, I didn't feel like Roger was conscious. I mean, I guess at the end he realizes it, but like, there's not really development of the character during the game, if that makes sense, because he's just a cockroach and he can't talk to us.
Right, but I mean, he runs around and finds out about his parents and him being put up for,
of course,
given to the nuns and.
Well, but that's us seeing his past. But I think I couldn't tell that he understood it. Actually, no, because think about it. At the end, because we read that paper that he walked on, right? And then he didn't realize until he and Eddie looked at the lockets. So we know all that, but he didn't do shit that entire game. He was just a cockroach.
Yeah, it wasn't until the end when Eddie is like, "Oh, my mom gave me this. I bought that for my wife."
It's you.
Yeah.
So it literally was all for nothing.
Right.
Oh no.
We knew we wanted this to be this gritty, dark, edgy, disgusting world, just like a real roach's world.
I mean, this was a gross game.
Anything that's gross
Who are these people?
or disgusting has this kind of self-developing notoriety.
In the beginning, we got totally caught up in this. One of the first things we thought about was the kitchen of this bar/restaurant, because we worked in a restaurant.
One of the hard parts about doing a game in 1995 was that, on a PC especially, was that we were working in a 256 color environment.
We wanted it to be hyper-realistic. We wanted it to be exactly like you were a cockroach. The stainless steel countertops and the tile floor and all this spilled grease and bacon and all these things that we had seen cockroaches crawling on when we were busboys in this restaurant.
What kind of fucking restaurant are you working at?
3D
A
applications.
fucking
And we were
disgusting one.
Discovering that, well, at the time, I mean, 3D applications were a lot
Very
more
crude.
primitive than they are
Yep,
now.
very crude
You know,
back in
I
the
had
day.
a Power Mac 8100 that had 96 megs of RAM, and that was the most RAM anyone had ever heard of in a computer. I think the RAM cost more than the computer cost.
So where can I get one of those shirts?
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Oh my gosh. I would be down for some Bad Mojo merch. Like, here's the thing is that like that shirt is just enough, right?
Right.
To have a person ask a question and yet it not be disgusting.
I wonder if you wore that shirt, how long it would take for a single person to come up and be like, "Oh damn, I remember that game."
We created this little cardboard jig, that was basically a screen.
Okay.
We would take this jig and we'd move it around and look at things and look at the floor and put it over objects and on countertops. We call it driving the roach.
As a person who went to school for filmmaking, so they basically built a storyboard that could be played in multiple directions.
Right. I mean, and when we were looking at the concept art, they had you have the entire garbage can puzzle, and then they just have it sectioned off. So I mean, that's basically what that is. It's one giant storyboard that you can break down into individual pieces, which are the screens that the player plays on.
Yeah.
That we had early on. We had like health meters and we had inventory, and you were gonna hook up with other roaches and breed, and there was all
Ew.
these, there was a lot of, like,
that's that lady roach we saw.
management in the game.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what happened was we were essentially a year out, and we were still like figuring out what the game was, and so we said, let's strip away all that stuff. It's all gone.
Phil and I reached the point.
Yeah,
where
that's
we
more
said,
like a
"Okay,
roach
that's
simulator
enough."
instead of like a
You know,
story
we can
game.
We can
Yep.
spend 6 weeks modeling a stick, or we can just go out down the block and take a picture of one. And that's where the kind of the infusion between the 3D and the photographic stuff started developing. This was high concept. We ran out of time, and we decided that, well, he's getting closer to being a real human being. He should have photographic stuff around him to kind of show his journey. Basically, punted.
Most of the puzzles in this game came from the fact that you were very small.
right.
And how do you either navigate safely through this place or create a larger effect due to your size? Without inventory management, which is a great idea. That's one of the reasons why I like this game much more. I mentioned it in the series that you don't have to carry around fucking hand cranks and keys.
Right,
and shit.
yeah, because I remember, so at this time, this era of PC gaming, I was definitely a console kid. My parents had an Apple II computer when I was really young that would play like the giant floppy disks, mostly like text-based games and stuff like that. but I was all on console. I didn't play on PC. So, but the games that I have played, the games that I have played from this sort of era, being like King's Quest and like those point and click. What's the Grim Fandango? Like those types of games.
Monkey Island.
Monkey Island. I never played Monkey Island, but yeah, that type of game, the point and click adventure game with your inventory and all that stuff. The problem with those games is the puzzles are so convoluted most of the time.
The thing, yeah, like where it's like not only do you have keys, you also have like touch and grab and look at and inspect. You know, like you have like 6 or 7 different verbs that you can do to anything that you do in the game.
Right. And so it just makes everything so convoluted. And then especially when like solving the puzzle is like, oh, you have to put the fish into the shoe and then the heel of the shoe comes off and there's a diamond that you put, like just shit that doesn't even make sense.
But you can't put the fish, Tim, you can't put the fish into the shoe until you look at the shoe and turn the shoe over.
Right. And then you touch the fish and then, yeah, it's like, it's so crazy. And a funny story about those types of games is because of how convoluted the puzzles are, and also because of piracy, the original Leisure Suit Larry game sold more copies of the strategy guide than they did of the game itself.
And sometimes I would make massing models in Swivel. I would just mock up what we thought the room would look like and what you were going to do.
We hated the idea of puzzles that were removed from the natural game environment. We wanted to make sure that all of the puzzles were seamlessly integrated into the game environment, so you were never removed from it. So everything was restricted by
what we just said.
A cockroach really do.
A cockroach can only do so many things.
Ultimately, it was 4 keys. You drive a roach. That's it. And we did that. Ultimately, I think we did it at first because we felt it was our safest bet to get the game done. But as a side effect, it allowed us as designers to, it set up a bunch of limitations for us, but that was good because it corralled us to thinking about only like what we could do as a roach.
I remember just pulling our hair out trying to think of things that roaches could do.
It wasn't much. You could push things, you could, you know, the weight of the roach could cause you to do things.
A lot of the puzzles in Bad Mojo are what we called like these Rube Goldberg-esque Byzantine sort of action-reaction puzzles where you do something on one screen that has an effect on something many screens in the future or somewhere else in the game. You would see a photograph and you'd crawl over it, and that would cause a small movie to play, you know, within the bounds of the photograph itself. And you'd see this little snippet, you know, this little moment from the life of the character in the photograph.
They were doing audio logs before it was cool.
Right.
But I don't feel like this was better than an audio log to me. Audio logs, all right, let me tell you the worst way to do this bullshit, which is where you find a fucking piece of paper and it says, "You have a new journal entry." And then you can go and read a fucking page. Now, this game did have journal entries, but they were scraps of paper and shit that were in the trash and on the ground and burned in the bathtub. And I felt that was a more natural way to experience that kind of thing.
Right, it's part of the environment.
Yeah, it's part of the game. And you can just walk over it, but if you want to stop and read it, you can. Does that break up the gameplay? Not any more than I feel a pressing J to read your journal, but it gives the world more depth because of where you found the thing and what was happening with the thing. Then, the living photographs, it would have been nice if they could be skipped after you have seen it already, or maybe even before, but I still feel that's better than a fucking audio log.
Right. The best way to do it, I think, is the way that BioShock handled them, where you just picked it up and you can push a button and it just plays as you continue playing the game. So there's no need, the game never stops you from doing what you were doing. And really, if you want to understand BioShock, you really need to find all of those audio logs, but it's not a lot of you sitting in menus reading diary entries and newspaper scraps and whatever.
I would prefer, I still even with audio logs like that, if you're gonna do that, you need to turn the game sound down temporarily so that I can fucking hear. Because otherwise, I have to sit there, I have to stand still, and listen to this audio log. So
Right.
I think I prefer the papers on the wall method.
Or it's just environmental storytelling.
Yeah. I prefer that. All right, this is a big one.
The biggest problem in creating this game wasn't the design, and it wasn't financing it, and it wasn't figuring out how to get it, to work on the screen. It was, how does a group of people with completely different personalities, some of which really shouldn't even
Oh
be
my
together
God.
in the first place?
Look at this fucking ancient shit. Look at this. I swear to God, I have this TV. This brown one right up here.
It looks very familiar.
Oh my God. Okay, all right. The first TV that I had a fucking NES, a Nintendo Entertainment System. And to get that NES to play on that TV, I had to buy a special adapter. Because, you already had the coaxial cable that screws into the back of TVs, right? Which
Right.
still exists to this day. I had to buy an adapter that split the coaxial cable into the signal that screwed into the place where the bunny ears went on this TV.
We had a set designer build an exact replica of that CG model that I had built.
So the CG model came first, and they recorded on it afterwards.
Right, and then they built the set based on
Yeah.
that.
Well, and I wonder if if they changed the CG model to reflect any of this stuff, or if it was just like perfectly recreate this room for me kind of thing. Here he comes.
In terms of casting, we got really lucky because, we didn't have any money. We weren't going to go to a traditional casting agency and get real talent.
Yeah.
Who is it? We had to rely on local San Francisco theatrical talent that would work for scale.
Got some nerve coming up here at this hour.
So it was just potluck. We were lucky that we found Michael Sommers and Mike Gilliam and Susan Volkin.
See, I was looking for Mike Gilliam. And I think he's still getting credits, but I couldn't find any contact information for him. So I'm hoping I can get. I've been trying to find some information for him. I'd like to ask him some questions too, if I could. I felt that Eddie was pretty convincing.
There's a shadow from your face is falling onto Mike's face. So
Try to stay over.
No, I don't want you to cheat over too far because we get to that same problem we had before. Just keep your head back up. I like you guys close together, but just a little bit more. A little bit back.
Oh, that's fine.
Michael Sommers, when he walked in that day, I knew it. I think he was the last guy we saw. He was late for his audition. He was an absolute mess. He was all over the place.
Who is it?
And he had this just beautiful. We fell in love with him physically. Was he the right guy for the role of Roger Sams? Probably not. If you look at the movies and you look at the way he acts, he's like this Buster Keaton-esque, Chaplin-esque guy. He's a lot like Jim Carrey, and he bills himself that way. He's a physical, comedic type actor. He's long, he's lanky, he's got these just vivid facial expressions, and when he acts, that's how he acts. His body acts. He moves all over the place. His eyes bug out of his head. His arms, his hands, his shoulders, every part of his body is involved in every one of his scenes. And when you look at the opening movie, we were looking at it last night. We were just laughing hysterically. It's so over the top, which was always our mantra in game production. It was just like over the top, over the top, over the top, because these movies were so small and they were compressed, down to like these blurry little things. We were never sure that the characters' emotions were going to read through. So we always told everyone to just go crazy, go full bore, give it to us all, and it worked.
The space that we were doing the shooting in was really susceptible to a lot of noise. There was a big parking lot outside. We were right by a freeway off-ramp. A lot of good takes got really ruined because of that,
Damn.
unfortunately. Right outside of the room that we were in were the bathrooms. Every time somebody flushed the toilet, the pipes would start knocking.
So if they had that sound flushing of the toilet being flushed, why didn't they use that when Eddie flushed the toilet instead of making it with their mouths?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, Tim, here it is. We might get the answer to our question.
So the first place we got animals was the South Carolina Biological Supply Company, which is this, wonderful catalog and website where you can buy things for the classroom. And in that catalog was something that just made our eyes light up. There was the cockroach kit.
Colossal
Ostensibly,
cockroach
the
kit.
classroom would study the life cycle of a cockroach. and kids would watch it or whatever. I don't know what the hell this thing would be used for. They would send
$104.
6 cockroaches in a little cup with some paper towels in it. We bought one of these cockroaches kits and created this terrarium of horrors.
You'd always keep a little water in the bottom for them to drink, and then they ate dog food. So I had this bag of dog food, and every week I'd put a little more dog food in there. And we'd get to watch them. You know, we get to watch them live and eat and multiply.
It got gross in a hurry.
We must have had 2,000 cockroaches.
Oh, God.
We'd point out the little pregnant ones. We'd see the little egg sacs, and we'd watch them hatch and these babies. And then it was amazing.
Just a squalid, horrible environment.
I needed to clean out this cage and get the dead ones out and clean the, roach poo out of it and everything. So if you open it up, they all run out. So what I figured out is if I took the little terrarium and stuck it in the freezer for about 15, 20 minutes, all the live ones would all hide and huddle into these wooden slats and start moving really slow and protect themselves. Then I go up to go out to the street, out to a garbage can, and I could shake out all the dead ones and hose out the little bottom of the terrarium and put them back in.
What a fucking
So I did this for
horrible thing to have to do.
Stop, living.
And we had these cockroaches in there that we would study. The artist would sit there, look at the cage, look at how the roach moves, look at the sheen on the back of the roach's, carapace and stuff, and we'd watch the roach move and how it would tip and roll
there's a game on the PlayStation 1 called Spider where you play as a tarantula, I believe, except that you are cybernetically enhanced. And again, it's a man's mind gets trapped into a body of a small creature game. But they talk about the research that they had to do and like the exact order in which the legs move and the gait that these animals have. I really have to admire people who are willing to go to such lengths to make something look so good.
At the time, you couldn't do fur or hair in 3D. It just wasn't doable. And it had to be hyper-realistic. So I knew that we would have to get a live rat. Did not want a pet shop rat, not a white one, not a black one. Wanted a real Norway rat. It was our original goal not to harm any animals during the production.
Well, you already killed a spider.
I called various exterminating companies here in the city, and I said, listen, this is going to sound crazy, but I'm shooting a movie here in the city. I need a rat that's been freshly killed. Can you get me one? 9 out of 10 people hung up on me. I got a call. Came like 12 o'clock in the afternoon one day. There was the exterminator truck sitting in front of a restaurant. There was this big Aussie, this Australian guy, who was the exterminator. Oh, we got a big one here for you. This guy's huge. We found him in a crate of cantaloupe. What do you want me to do with it, mate? And I was like, I can't use it alive. So he takes the rat, and smashes it against the side of his pickup truck, just like, and kills it. It's dead. There you go.
Jesus.
Put it in a Ziploc bag.
Fuck.
We raced back to the office as if we were holding like some kidney for organ transplantation. We went to a fish market in Chinatown in San Francisco for the catfish. And if you've ever been to one of these places, there are all these squalid tanks where there are like soft-shell turtles and various types of fish and delicacies. And in one tank was just a big tank full of catfish.
If that's the word you want to
I
use.
remember saying, I need 2 catfish. The guy didn't speak English. We were communicating with hand gestures. And I was like, no, alive. Because they were going to kill them right there for us. I said, no, I want them alive. You want them alive? So yeah, then they had some conference behind the counter as to whether or not they could give us live catfish. So they finally agreed to give us live catfish. We put them in a bag, brought them home, and I wound up beheading and gutting the fish myself, which we have on video, I believe. But those catfish were going to be killed right there in an awful way by that Chinese butcher. So I don't really feel bad about killing the catfish. It wasn't like there was no chance of there being a born free moment here. So we had
he couldn't get away with that shit today, dude.
Nah.
I mean, but luckily we have the technology that we don't need to do that. But, whew, that wouldn't, acceptable at the time. And I applaud them. I applaud them for trying to do it as best as possible.
Right, it seems like you did it the best way you could.
To his credit, he didn't kill the fucking rat. The Australian guy did.
Right.
So we had a cat trainer come in.
Yeah, here we go.
She brought 3 cats with her in cages, and we would evaluate the cats that day to find out which cat was behaving, well enough to actually work that day. Because they get all moody, they're insane, they're cats. And they don't feed these things the day before the shoot, and they perform based on reward. They love to smoke these little chunks of smoked turkey, and that's how they do their little things. And it was a huge deal. We paid more attention to this cat and the various issues revolving around this cat than any other talent-related issue.
There is a golden rule in Hollywood: do not work with animals, because they do not speak English and they will not listen to you.
Right.
So do not ever, if you can, Tim, if you're doing a movie, do not work with animals.
We had to have. There was a huge debate as to whether or not we needed cat insurance.
That's a very hairy cat.
From that day onward, any boondoggle-esque ridiculous issue was referred to as the cat insurance issue. If anyone went down some ridiculous trail, we were like, hey, man, that's just cat insurance.
So we do not know whether or not the cat has survived. Well, maybe it could be under the commentary. That might be under the commentary. All right, we have another 6-minute video, the aftermath.
The first year and a half, you really kind of don't know what you're doing. You're kind of fumbling around in the dark with your concept.
I don't think any of us really knew what, the public was going to think of it.
We had missed Christmas, and it was kind of, it was pretty depressing at that point.
When we merged with Pulse Entertainment toward the tail end of production, it gave us the steam we really needed to complete the game. I mean, there was a level of organization and an impetus there that kind of lit the fire on us to push us over the finish line.
When we finally shipped the game in January, that was like the greatest thing, because I'd just gotten physical a couple of months ago, and my blood pressure was extraordinarily high.
So we went on the road to demo and promote Bad Mojo.
Whenever we would go to trade shows, we'd take a jar of roaches with us.
We had
they had plenty.
Jar with 2 Madagascar hissing cockroaches in it. And these things, they're gigantic. They're like this big.
Ugh.
And they hiss, and they're pretty ugly. And this day, you could never imagine walking through the airport with a giant pickle jar full of cockroaches. We put them in the overhead bin.
Oh man, times were different back then.
Flight, we'd go in there and check, make sure they were okay.
It would repel people. Some people would just see it and they would run away in fear. But it would draw other people in. It was a great conversation piece.
We were in a hotel in Chicago, and the cockroaches escaped the jar,
and they ran off somewhere, and we couldn't find
Oh,
them.
God.
Imagine the next person who comes into this hotel room and finds 2 gigantic Madagascar cockroaches. We turned that hotel room upside down. We were panicking, but we found them. The 2 cockroaches had wedged their way into a little fold in the shower curtain, and we found them in there. It was hilarious.
When we first started,
I know it's a weird thing to know. I know that it's a weird thing to know, but roaches like to be pressed. They enjoy the feeling of being squished, very slightly. So that's why you always find them in folds of things, or in the folds of boxes. They'll also eat the glue that you use to put cardboard boxes together. So learned a lot about that.
It's weird that you know that.
I think I remember the pressing thing. I watched a video a long time ago where they had a roach that was controlling a robot by walking. So they had the roach glued to a little arm, and it would walk on a ball, and the ball would drive the robot. And so the roach was most comfortable when it was being slightly pressed down onto the ball, and that's how they got it to skitter around. And the glue thing I learned because that's why, I was very insistent that my mom throw away all the cardboard because I did not want roaches in the house. I became very afraid of cockroaches as a young man.
Winning an award, because I was like, oh my God, in the thick of it, it was really dark, and I couldn't see my way out of the tunnel.
The game sold a lot of copies, I believe over 1 million copies.
A million? That's a little excessive.
No, according to what I read on Wikipedia, it was 200,000. Maybe that was Redux?
Maybe. This is the number 13 on the board. Hold on, let's see what else is on this list. Okay, best sellers, research period, based from March 10th to April 10th. Descent to Wing Commander Mist. This is Mist Rising.
By February of 97, which would have been, a year after it came out, its sales had reached 175,000 units. Louis said in 2004 that he was pretty sure we sold over 200,000 units by the end of Bad Mojo's shelf life.
Okay. All right.
So a million's a little, I don't know about that.
A lot of copies, I believe, over 1 million copies.
I couldn't believe how many awards we actually won. We got
Oh, wait a second. Hold on. There's some data here. Top 10 Windows games on CD-ROM. Publisher. What does this say? I can't tell what that says. Average price. Bad Mojo was $46. Hey, I played Dogs. Beavis and Butthead. Top 10's Windows. So this was just, I guess, a list of
Windows 95 CD-ROM games.
SimCity 2000. That was a great game. I remember playing that. I also have MechWarrior 2. So I was gaming on PC at this time. So that's probably a good indication of where I was in my life at that time.
Oh, published by Acclaim. Rest in peace.
Yep.
You're on TV. That was really cool.
Really?
How'd you like to wake up one morning to find out that you'd been turned into a cockroach?
Something crazy happened when I looked at that necklace.
That's what happens to Roger Sams in Pulse Entertainment's Bad Mojo, priced at $59.95.
Ooh. Wait, do a conversion. $59.95.
Inflation calculator. $119.21.
Oh my god.
That's what people complain, want to bitch about. Oh, video games went up to $70. $70 is still less than what video games are worth.
Mm-hmm.
Because they fucked up at the time that they jumped to 70, because they jumped to 70 and then COVID happened, and that extra $10 went out the window with post-COVID inflation. So now they should be like $80 to get that $10 extra that they needed, but you can't jump prices up again this soon after.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, people complain about $70, but like this was a game 27 years ago.
Yeah.
That would have cost you basically $120 in today's money.
Well, Donkey had a video about game prices, and like fucking NES games are like $200 a cartridge if you adjust them for inflation. They were still 60. Yeah, it's fucking like games are cheaper now than they've ever been.
Oh yeah, and games back then too, like
sucked ass.
Well, a lot of them did, yes, but they were priced according to basically what the game was. There was no universal pricing structure. So Final Fantasy 3 or 4 may come out and it may be $100 then. And then, NBA Jam comes out and maybe it's $50. And so there was no universal pricing. It was kind of based on what the game was.
Well, that's still what's happening today, though. Like, indie games versus AAA games versus, like Nintendo games, they never, ever will go on sale, ever. But that's just because Nintendo pumps polish into all their products. Like, yeah, it's just, games have always been a weird medium. Like, if you're going to the movie theater, you're getting charged a ticket price. You know what I'm saying? You're going
Right.
to, and that's why whenever I talk about games, I like to take however many hours that I played it and divide it by the cost to find a unit of fun. I have fun units to see how much I've enjoyed a game, which is not really, or maybe that's not the right thing. But you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, to me, like hour played versus cost, like that doesn't matter to me. I will gladly pay $70 for a just well polished, really fun 10-hour game. I will do that all day long. But if Assassin's Creed Valhalla comes out and it's 200 fucking hours of I won't even pay $10 for that, because to me that is not a game that I'm remotely interested in.
Because this Assassin's Creed games are empty bullshit.
Yeah,
right.
That's what I'm saying. So if your whole, not saying you, but if someone's whole prospect is, oh, I have to get maximum amount of gameplay for my dollar, you're gonna play these bloated bullshit video games.
Yeah.
Versus you could spend Like I paid $70 for Resident Evil Village. I finished it in less than 10 hours, but I had a blast playing that game.
Yeah, it was they cut out all of the bullshit between sections, and it's 10 hours solid of fun. But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like when I compare it to a movie ticket, you pay. Well, it depends on the movie theater you go to, but you pay for about 2 hours of experience, right? And depending on the price of your ticket, whatever, around $20. So $10 an hour of good, fun shit. So, like, Tears of the Kingdom, I played the shit out of Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I will say, I didn't completely do everything in that game, because I was getting towards where, like, I had done every light route, or every light route in the depths, and I was starting to do the shrines on the surface, and I was like, God, I'm fucking so bored with this. And I cranked out the end of the game in an hour and a half. Like, I was like, all right, I'm done, and I just ended the game, right? That game cost me $70, but that was... I think probably got a good 40, 50 hours out of it, right? So if you're thinking about it, like, price, as long as I'm getting at least, $10 an hour of fun, I'm happy, right? I'm good with it. That's why, like, Broken Armor that I paid $25 for, and I played it for, 2 hours. That's a great deal.
Yeah.
When I think about, I think it may have been a byproduct of me growing up with not having a lot of money.
I understand that.
Having quality use of my money is important to me. When I first moved to Las Vegas, and I was making $10 an hour, which is more money than I had ever made in my life, and it was when I first moved to Las Vegas, it was right after the lowest point in my life where I was having to work like 3 jobs. I was literally selling my blood plasma so that I could pay my student loans. I still have the scars in my arms from it. Like, it was fucking awful. It was the worst year of my life. I think I made $9,000 that year. I hated it. I hated it. So I moved to Las Vegas. They said, "Ooh, Alex, I got a job." They said, "Alex, come with us to the casino. You're in Vegas. You have to go to the casino, right?" So I took $20 and I put it in a slot machine and I pulled the lever and it disappeared. And I thought to myself, that was 2 hours of work that vanished in literally 1 second.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? I've never gone back to a casino. I mean, I've been to a casino to go see shows and stuff, but getting value out of, like, I could have bought $20 of food and had hundreds of times more enjoyment, literally hundreds of seconds, rather than a 1 second of a pull on a machine.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that casinos are meant to steal your money anyway, even the idea of, like, oh, you go, plan to take the money and use it and lose it. And I'm like, but I could do 6 other things with that money that are way more fun. I could buy a game on Steam for $20 and play that for 15 hours.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a gambling person. But I understand what you mean about that being more important as a younger person, because I would always do that too when I was a kid, and basically I would get new video games at Christmas, and like that was it. Other than that, it would be rentals. So when a new game would come out, like when Christmas would come around, and it's like, okay, make your Christmas list. What do you want for Christmas? The games that I would ask for Christmas would be
older.
Final Fantasy would be Knights of the Old Republic, would be, these games that I know I'm going to get 50, 60, hours out of.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, the new Simpsons Road Rage came out. I'm not going to waste a Christmas. Like, I could rent that and be done with it in the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that was a factor for me. And it's like, okay, like basically once a year I get a couple new video games to like own. And those are going to be like the biggest, longest, meatiest, RPGs and shit that I'm going to get tons of time out of. I don't want to waste this opportunity on some game that I'm going to be done with in less than a week.
I had the Riz game growing up, so I had 2 strategies that I would employ. So one was that I was a generation behind. So when the Super Nintendo was out, I had the Nintendo. When the Nintendo 64 was out, I had the Super Nintendo. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all the games that I purchased were secondhand used games from fucking Rhino Games. I don't know if you remember Rhino Games.
Yep.
Over there next to Walmart, or Babbage's before it was absorbed by fucking GameStop.
Mm-hmm.
So the used section was my jam. Secondly, I had some, fucking privileged ass rich friends. They were still good people, but these were some kids that were always on the newest console, that they always had the newest games. And so these were kids that would literally give me games. Like, I'm done with this. I was given a whole ass PlayStation 1.
Mm-hmm.
My copy of Super Mario, or my copy of Super Smash Bros, my copy of Ocarina of Time, Harvest Moon 64, Yoshi's Island. I have more than that, but I have literally sitting on my shelves right now games that were just given to me from kids who didn't care and didn't want them anymore.
You're right. That's awesome.
It was great. It was great, man. I cause I don't know, I guess I got it from my dad. I have a little bit of Riz, but it's mostly dealing with people. It's not dealing with the women, as from the latest Champed Up, the champion of being single. That's there's a reason I won that prize.
And this is also you, the roach Rogers turned into. You'll be living life as a cockroach until you figure out a way to change yourself back into a man.
Maybe you like the cockroach idea,
Some
okay?
people like
Which is
it.
fine. We won't.
Yep,
make
I remember
fun
that
if you
box.
do.
Very funky, very addictive, not for the squeamish.
That is very true.
People in charge
Funky
of
and
the company
addictive.
gave us freedom to do, whatever we want, and I think it shows in the end product of the game. You don't see a lot of games like that anymore. There's a real formula to games now. There are these first-person shooters, there are these fighting games, these RPGs, but you just don't see anything that sort of out there and bizarre.
He's fucking right.
And I can compare it to like an independent film or something like that. That's
Yep.
what it reminds me of. It's like sort of the Being John Malkovich.
We're actually in the Macworld Game Hall of Fame. We won an MVP award
Whoa.
for PC Magazine. We developed a French and a German version as well as Japanese version. So we would go into the recording studio and we'd actually look at these actors and direct them to do basically the same video with Roger and Eddie. It was just hilarious.
Wait, there's a Japanese recasted version of Bad Mojo?
Are you? Is that what he meant, or they just watched the footage and acted the way that they acted?
Maybe. Hold on.
To hear them speaking in long German words in a movie we'd seen 1,000 times.
Oh, okay.
The sync is kind of there, kind of not. You can't look at a Caucasian person speaking Japanese and think, wow, this is great stuff.
Wasn't rocket science, okay? It was just us having fun when we were working 12-hour days and we were totally burnt out and goofy.
It was a close-knit bunch. I mean, we all had our roles, and they were very defined,
I think one of the greatest things about doing this game was all the relationships I developed.
At the end of the game, I had this terrarium where it must have had like hundreds of thousands of roaches. I mean, it was pretty big. Started with 12, and it was sort of, I didn't really know what to do with it. It was like, God, if I took this thing and just opened it up in the basement of some building, I could, condemn a friggin' building, So, didn't want to do that. So what I ended up doing was what we call the roach genocide. I took an entire can of Raid.
Oh, dude.
And just sprayed the entire can of Raid into this terrarium and then just duct taped the whole thing closed and stuck it in a dumpster. And what else are you going to do with, 100,000 cockroaches?
I would really...
Jesus.
I thought they were trying not to harm any animals during... They harmed... wait, well, hold on. Now, this guy is the same guy that said that they sold 1 million units. 100,000, about 20,000 cockroaches.
Yeah, it seems like he's a bit of an exaggerator.
Well, I like him. I forget. He's the sound designer, but he was a 3D artist. He's a cool dude.
Okay, so here we are. We're checking out the opening movie from Bad Mojo. I'm Phil, the producer and one of the designers.
I'm Alex Louie. I'm one of the producers.
And I'm Vinny Carrella, and the director and writer of this insanity.
So it sounds like...
So what we're looking at here is the opening movie.
Drew Huffman
We did
wasn't
this,
involved.
To kind of pack in all of the different story elements that we needed to get in to tell the game. And we spent a lot of time on this movie. Our whole thing, at first, remember we conceived this thing as we wanted to do the whole thing as one shot, and we got over that pretty quickly. And the last vestige was that we did this. We did this as the opening. The 3D part is one continuous shot.
I think the bridge here is noteworthy because we built it in Swivel 3D. I mean, Drew Huffman did a great job with this. I mean, he built it in this software that was from like 1992.
It's hard. Shit was hard to do back then.
Charles Rose did this sequence. An illustrious man.
Now see, look.
Phil Tippett.
This was that bridge that we saw the reference photo of. So this is where they they recreated it and inserted it digitally next to the bridge.
One of the reasons why I think the sequence is so long, especially in the beginning, is because we conceived this opening. We wanted to have this Apocalypse Now style opening monologue that would set the tone for the game and also pack in all this information. I remember really trimming this thing down and trying to get it tighter and tighter, but it was still so long. We needed this really long, pushing over the city.
Look, there's Franz the cat.
Franz
just jumped out of the way. This is a big thing, like how we did getting in from the 3D building to the live action set, and we spent a lot of time on that, trying to figure out how to do that.
I mean, I know how to do it now, but
Roger
it's difficult to do back in the day, I'd imagine.
Michael Summers,
yeah. And this is one of the rooms. This is one of the last rooms you see in the game. This is Roger's room.
We wanted to make sure that we got in all this information you had to use later, like the cat, which is a player in the game.
Bogart the cat.
Bogart.
It's a nice cat.
So the opening movie has a lot of meaning in terms of gameplay, because if you pay attention and you really look at all these different things, it's going to help you get through the last section of the game.
I really, honestly, I am impressed. That they say that they didn't have a plan. And maybe we're not getting as good of an idea of the plan that they didn't have, but with the final product, they really did put together a product that is user friendly. It makes sense. The whole game makes sense.
Yeah. It's weird, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Look at this. When we saw his tape, when he did his screen test, we realized he's so over the top.
We were so worried about, because the movie sizes were small, that we wanted to make sure that all the emotion read and that you could see. I think that's why we chose him, was because his facial expressions are hilarious and so over the top.
Yeah, this is exaggerated.
Look, there's all that money. Remember, we printed up all that money. Our office manager was saying we could get in trouble because we were counterfeiting money.
They make prop money.
What's this guy's name again?
His name is Eddie Bettito, and the character's name is Mike Gilliam. He's an old school actor who's acted with a lot of the great Jack Nicholson. And
really?
He's been around for a long time.
He was hilarious.
And he was really on the skids when we.
And look at that, I love it because he just kept spitting in Michael Summers' face during this take.
I think it took a whole day to shoot this, if not 2 days. I think.
I think it took 2 days. Yeah, I mean, this is the set that we built in our offices. So this was built in a really small little area. We built this whole set to mimic. We built a lot of sets, but we built this one. This one wasn't mimicked really in 3D, but some of the other sets actually were built as 3D sets and live action sets.
I think it's funny here that he can see the money through the closed suitcase.
And then we had to get this thing, you might want to lock it.
We really worried about people missing the hints. We wanted to make sure there were hints in the opening movie.
It's pretty telegraphed, yeah.
Yeah, they got it pretty well.
We were so worried that the game was going to be unplayable.
I'm not seeing all the scary shit on his wall. You go down the paper, you go to the moth, and the moth flies you somewhere else in this room. So I think the scary part is elsewhere, wherever that fan is on the wall.
And that people weren't going to understand what to do or how to do it, because it's pretty esoteric. It's not like a typical game.
Oh yeah, locket. The locket. We had this locket custom made by this jeweler guy, and he made it from a stopwatch?
From an old pocket watch, and we had to have it in a week, and it cost, I think, $1,600.
Got a lot of help for that.
When I looked at that necklace.
You probably could have went out to Toys R Us and bought something.
No, we used the locket a lot. It's in a lot of close-up shots, and it's.
So that's called a hero prop. by the way, Tim, in movie production. So you have regular props. So like the typewriter I guess like the desk fan and like shit that he doesn't interact with. Those are regular props. Hero props are also sometimes called actor props, which are props that are very close, front and center, very important that they have additional functions, that they are solid and usable and functional.
Interesting.
It's really cool, and it has the air of antiquity to it. It looks really neat.
This is my favorite part when he turns into the half man, half roach. We call it Roach. Yeah. Remember that? We shot that.
Rehearsals.
The rehearsals
Michael
were
Sommers
funny.
was hysterical.
Did he actually have to wear like a half roach costume?
Thanks to Daryl Flowers. Remember him?
I do.
Our grip, yeah. And here's a locket. That's Susan Vulcan in there. She's the Oracle.
Susan Vulcan.
The interesting part here is this screen's upside down, and in the game we had to do it that way because we had to make it right side up in the game.
Yeah, we kept using this circle thing. There's circles throughout the game. Circle, circle, circles. Like the locket's a circle, his eye's a circle. We have a lot of eyes in the game too. You're going to see all repetitive motif. This is the sewer chamber.
Love this high resolution cockroach that we made.
Yeah.
Greg Smith made that cockroach.
Greg Smith. And now we're into the game itself.
Okay. The actress, the mother, what is she up to these days?
Let me look.
The Oracle. Has she gone on, or is this her magnum
Susan
opus?
Vulcan. Her only credit on IMDb is for Bad Mojo.
Oh boy. Well, I wonder who. That sounds like a good question for Michael.
He said all the cast was, or they were getting local San Francisco theater people. Maybe she did more stage stuff. And yeah, but her only credit on IMDb is for Bad Mojo.
All right.
So this is a movie called Drink Up. It's a movie that you see after you drop the pill into Eddie's beer. It's a good example of going from a 3D set to one of the 2D sets that we created.
And we were really worried about the player understanding that what he does has repercussions all over the apartment building and in the room that he's in, and making sure that they understand the cause and effect relationships between objects that they step on and
dumps the keys out. Yep.
And here, Eddie passes out because he drinks a sleeping pill with his beer. Of course, that happens instantaneously, and thus knocking all the money in his bed.
He doesn't believe in banks. Yeah.
Into the cigar, which we made sure you understood that too, and all the loose change that he keeps in the bed falls on the cigar box, thus creating a bridge for you into the next room.
The magical pill.
Yeah, I like the fact that he pulls up his blanket
after
passed out.
And I remember the rig that you set up, Phil, to have all that money fly out of the bed. That was hysterical.
This particular one is the scenario in which you are being redeemed. You get turned back into a man, and this is after you've done. What is it you have to do here?
I think you have to light the paper towels on fire to wake up Eddie.
Yeah, the smoke alarm goes off, and you're saving yourself and you're saving Eddie.
Because there are three endings, There's the everyone dies,
there's four endings.
Eddie dies, or Eddie and Roger lives.
So this is really the only win, quote unquote win scenario.
It's the good ending.
And so what we're indicating here is the gas.
Which is the one we got.
Turned off the gas on the stove because of Eddie's big chili cook-off experiment, and Roger's trying to get out of the building. He smells the gas, he grabs all of his stuff, makes sure he gets his passport, runs out of there. There's our water heater.
So when the gas reaches the basement, it
Kaboom.
explodes. The building explodes.
He runs out of there. He runs out, and Eddie's already out waiting for him. We've seen him run out of the bar earlier. Kaboom!
So of course Roger is still clutching the locket, and Eddie is clutching his most valuable possession,
which means that every animal that helped you through this entire game has now been killed.
Yeah.
Picture of his wife Angelina, and here they realize through an incredible twist of fate that they are in fact father and son.
Yeah, it's a touching moment.
Just look at the expression on Roger's face when he figures it out.
And he forgets the fact that Eddie shunted him into a horrible orphanage.
Yeah, they
made his life hell as a boy.
They instantly reconcile and decide to go off together to Mexico. and make amends.
Just best buddies right now.
He buys
You're
him a
my
bar.
father.
Roger's,
Hi, Dad.
Yes, it's the ideal scenario for them. Roger's studying insects in the rainforest, and Eddie's running a tiki bar on the beach.
Yeah, who needs you as a therapy? We'll just go off and we'll
Drink
hang
our
out.
sorrows away.
Sounds good to me, man.
This was all done on blue screen in our basement. And I remember we struggled, like what would they do at the end? Like what would our ending be?
How do we sell the beach? You know, like we put a couple of lawn chairs up there, put them in some Hawaiian shirts, and threw some palm fronds in the background.
I think it was the last live action shot that we did.
Yeah.
And yeah, we got some Hawaiian shirts and some tiki mugs, and called it a day.
What was the code name for this?
I think we called this movie the Gilligan's Island ending.
Yeah, this is the Gilligan's Island ending, and I gotta say that this last shot is my favorite in the entire game. These two guys.
With the umbrella,
Cheers.
the shirts, and no lesson was learned.
Right.
Excellent. Well, that's it. That's every piece of bonus content.
We did it.
We did it. We have now, as far as we can do, explored every single piece of Bad Mojo except for whatever it is that Michael Sommers can tell us. All right, everybody. So not only did we get Michael Sommers to reply to us, we also got Vincent Carrella, who was, all over that, bonus documentary stuff. So we got some answers to some burning questions. Let's see what we got. We're going to start with the questions that we asked Michael Sommers.
Remember in the making of like the bonus content, they mentioned they were shooting this in San Francisco, and everybody that they used in the game were local San Francisco actors. So we asked him if he was, native to San Francisco or if he had moved there to become an actor, and what was his kind of theater background at the time and some of the favorite things he had worked on.
So his reply was that he is a theater guy from Vermont, and he actually moved to San Francisco, Oakland specifically. So he said his favorite production at the time were Cloud, Nine and Ball Boys, which was Garage Theater. He says he was the co-founder in Burlington, Vermont, so I believe that might be a production studio. 12th Night, and the day they shot John Lennon at the University of Vermont. The time of your life was at the Raven in Chicago, and Scenes from My Sex Life from Ronnie Larson in San Francisco. He does mention that he's being too lazy to use proper pronunciation, so if I don't get the message across, it's his fault.
All right, so the next thing we asked him was how he heard about Bad Mojo and the audition process for that, and if he was kind of interested in working on it just like as a video game, or was it like he's an actor, so it was a job kind of thing?
He got his audition through his agent, Mitchell Talent. So shout out to Mitchell for making this piece of magic happen. What's interesting is he actually did a lot of early tech work with motion capture stuff. So if you check out his IMDb page, Michael X Sommers, you'll see he's got Star Wars, Back to the Future, Street Fighter, The Sims, Herbs version, not the new Sims, doing voiceover, but he does have Bad Mojo live action stuff. He was one of the first actors doing motion capture with the LED light suits that people use. Although I think today they use the little motion capture suits with little balls on them, like little dots.
Yeah.
Well, they used to be balls. Now it's like little dot stickers. He shot a video for the E convention in Atlanta for Star Wars. He was the first actor to be shot on camera that became the standard digital film camera of 24p. Apparently they took a camera to Australia to shoot Star Wars, which I'll see if I can plop that up on screen. As we mentioned in our previous stuff, this came out around the same time as Myst. So while Myst was eerie and beautiful, this was a dirty and disgusting game.
All right, and then we asked him, was he then, or would he have ever considered himself a gamer? Has he actually played Bad Mojo since it came out? And how he thought kind of his performance turned out in the game.
Unfortunately, he has played Bad Mojo for less than an hour, as he is not a gamer. But he says he's very proud of his performance, and he believes that it holds up to this day. So he says here, when they shot it, they would do 15 different takes. Every time Vincent Carrella would tell him, all right, you gotta do more. Like, give me one more. Go as far over the top as you can. And that was always the take that they used. So every take that we see was the last take of the day for that particular shot.
Right, and they mentioned that in the making of, that one of the things they really liked about him was how much of an overacting Jim Carrey type person he was.
Yeah.
Because they were so worried about the expression of the performance coming through on this tiny little video.
Yeah. I think that's a question that we asked later too.
Or we asked him. He mentioned before that if you go to his IMDb page, he's got voice credits and some other video games. And we asked him, did being a part of Bad Mojo lead to other work in the industry?
So turns out, at least in his case, kind of. Having experience on the games helped him perform better in the audition and then the jobs, but it basically, you get jobs that you get. So, and as a person who did some voice acting stuff on online, like, you never know how a person's gonna roll into your profile and find you. So, kind of, he was a little bit more familiar with how games work after Bad Mojo, but he says it didn't really affect him in terms of getting jobs.
All right. Okay. So here was the question that we asked. So Vincent Carrella, like we said, mentioned that his over-the-acting style was what they liked about him, and so we asked if that was a choice that he made for this particular performance, or if like his larger-than-life style is just kind of what he does as an actor.
That was what was getting him the most work at the time. So that's what, you got to do what makes you the money, man. So he says that's what he chose to go for, and it got him his jobs. He thought it would be sort of a surprise from what I can read here, but they were open-minded about it and they liked it. So they didn't think of it as part of the character until he came in and did his audition. So he literally shaped Michael literally shaped Roger into the character that we got to see on screen, which is pretty great. He considers himself to be walking the line of what some people consider inappropriate, but he says that's how he makes his living.
So then we asked him, in the opening sequence of the game, which is, there's a large, I would say, well, the beginning and ending obviously is mostly where his performance is. And so we asked him, the opening sequence gives a lot of clues and hints to help the player later in the game as far as like what you see in the video and everything, meaning that the game was probably somewhat deeper into production by the time, he started filming that stuff. So we asked, was the game largely finished by the time he got involved? And did he see much of the game prior to filming that stuff? And if so, did that help kind of inform his character?
He said he wasn't really involved, which makes sense, right? They don't have the time to sit and explain and show him everything that has to do with the game. So business is business and time is money. So, they're thinking that day when he showed up, this is the stuff that he needs to see. They gave him what he needed to do what he needed to do, but they didn't spend time showing him the whole game. It was a need-to-know basis for no reason other than it would waste time. Okay.
All right, so then we asked him how long it took to film all of his stuff, and what the other actors that he worked with like, and if he was able to keep any souvenirs from the production.
So Mike Gilliam played Eddie, and Susan Volkin played, what was her name?
Angelina?
Yes. So he says it took him about 3 weeks to get the filming done. He says that Mike was doing it for the attention. He didn't take any money to play Eddie, and he liked to get the attention from the makeup girls and the directors and the cameraman. He doesn't think he meant it from the audience, but maybe he did. But so Mike did this game for free, which is I like his performance. I think he did a bang up job, portraying Eddie. Michael Sommers remembers Mike Gilliam very well because they were in a lot of scenes together. He doesn't remember Susan too terribly well, since he just doesn't remember her very well, and he doesn't even remember her face. He remembers the cat more than she does.
Right, and she was, if you watched us play through the game, she's kind of on her little interstitials by herself. She wasn't in any of the scenes with them, so
There was a scene where they're in a photo booth and they're sharing a kiss. There's also the scene where she dies, but I suppose
yeah. So she did more with Eddie, but she wasn't in any scenes with him, I don't believe, with Michael.
Remember, Michael Sommers played young Eddie. He kissed her on the mouth. That's a weird thing to me. Like, how do actors, I don't know, maybe it's because that's not what I do for a living, but I don't know. I feel like I would remember a person that I kissed on the mouth.
They were talking about in the making of this insane roach terrarium that they had, where by the end of production there were just like thousands and thousands of roaches, and so we asked him if he ever saw the roach terrarium.
He claims that he didn't. He was like thinking that it was all animated, but he says he has some other memories bubbling up. Maybe he suppressed his memories of the disgusting roach terrarium. I don't want anybody to have to remember that if they don't have to.
Right. Phil Simon was one of the producers.
Phil Simon, so he remembers some vague connection to Phil Simon and a giant tank of roaches.
All right. So we asked during our playthrough of the game. We got the good ending where Roger and Eddie both escape before the apartment explodes and they run away to Mexico. But we never saw what happened to Franz the cat, and we asked him if he had any idea what happened.
He actually seemed a little upset about the fact that Franz disappears. He asked us to play the game and get a different ending so that Franz would be safe, but he doesn't know. He says he has no idea, which is actually what spurred me to send a message to Vinny. He says he's credited as Michael Ray Sommers on Bad Mojo. Or no, excuse me. He was non-union when he was working on Bad Mojo. So he was just Michael Sommers, but now he's Michael X Sommers.
Yeah, if you pull him up on IMDb, it's Michael X Sommers.
I wonder why that happens. Stuff about the art industry the acting industry that I don't know.
Probably what it is because he wasn't a union actor in SAG or whatever, he went by, just his name. And then when he joined the union, I guarantee you, there was someone already called Michael Sommers. So in order to, for his like SAG card or whatever, he had to put the X in there to make himself stand out.
And then it would also be not only Michael Sommers, but probably Michael R. Sommers, I would imagine.
Yeah, maybe something like
that. Oh, well. So, since Michael didn't know the answer to the fate of Franz the cat, we actually got Vincent Carrella on the horn and asked him some questions, too. What's funny is that I actually sent a message to Vincent. I was like, hey, I'm a big fan of Bad Mojo, and so on and so forth, and I sent this, like, really long email. Well, not really long, but, I sent a decently sized email, like, can we ask you some questions? And his reply was, okay. Like a Bobby Hill, like, okay. Luckily for us, he did expand a lot when I actually asked the questions. So the first one that I said was, again, this is directly following the email with Michael, I said, we have a interest in the fate of Franz the cat. So the last time we see him was when the terrarium was knocked over, but we don't see a single thing of him out of that scene after that. So I asked him, hey, does Franz die?
And so he responded, and so we don't know what happens to the cat, but there are a few things to consider. So the window in the room where the fish tank gets smashed is open, and Franz knows how to get out because at the beginning of the game you see him sitting in that window sill. So it's possible he escaped, but it is kind of left ambiguous.
I wonder if they did that on purpose, because he does ask a question later, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So I wonder if he did that on purpose. So Dan Melvin, which was the guy who worked on all the 3D environments, he was the one that had to clean out the roach tank and feed all the roaches with dog food. he mentioned that the film sets were constructed using 3D models that he had produced. So I was wondering if anything was added to the 3D environments as a result of the sets being built, or the sets built exclusively and solely as a copy of his 3D environments.
And so it kind of went back and forth. He said that the sets were built from the models that Dan made, but the real props and everything, for example, the radio, were made. The props existed before they were turned into 3D models. So the sets were 3D models first, but the props and stuff that you interact with throughout the game existed first and then became 3D models.
So they had a very good idea of what they were trying to do. You know, like, basically by the time it was time to build the props, the set was set in stone. They knew what they wanted to do. So it does sound like by the time Michael got to production, the game was pretty pushed along. Then I've asked, it was mentioned that incorporating photographs of real-life items helped push Bad Mojo to the frantic and final phase of production. So I was curious, because of that crunch at the end, did anything get cut? Like, were any puzzles or areas cut from the game?
And so he said that nothing was cut due to time, but there were things that they did to kind of simplify the game. For example, when you hop on the moth and it flies you back and forth from like the desk it's like a desk and a table. You go back and forth. Instead of kind of making the player go through a whole bunch of different screens to get from one place to the other, it was just kind of easier just to have that little movie play of the moth flying you across.
Yeah, because I mean, if he already had the 3D moth, he already had the 3D roach, he already had the 3D room, so you just do a little fly through instead of, you know, like, we just don't have enough time to program all this stuff in. So just make it a movie, just throw it in there. We got space on the disc. CD-ROM, baby, we got all that space. All right, the kitchen scene was pretty much the sole reason. The kitchen scene and the rat scenes were the reasons I put those warnings at the beginning of the the episodes. So I asked about the kitchen food. So I said the disgusting food in the kitchen looked very convincing, and the catfish were real and personally gutted by Vincent himself. So I asked, did the kitchen scene smell terrible? And was that scene the filthiest area of production?
He said yes, that all of the food was real, and they added funny labels to the cans. I guess that's probably a trademark copyright issue. And that the set was messy and gross, and it was a big source of contention on set because they were bickering how the food was supposed to be laid out and presented, and that the entire premise of that set, you know, Eddie making gumbo to win a cooking contest to save the bar, which I don't remember picking up on that while we were playing the game. Maybe it was just something we overlooked.
I didn't pick up on it, but all the clues were there. I remember we found a recipe, and of course, you know, all the food is there. They really put a lot of love into making sure the world was alive and cohesive. Like, all the stuff in the trash can, the bills on the floor, like the environmental storytelling of this gumbo cook-off. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing stuff about the cooking contest, but it never connected in my mind that that's what Eddie was trying to do. But It makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. And so he said they shot each element, you know, one by one in the whole kitchen, and then put it all together in Photoshop to make that big, disgusting mess that we see in the game.
Ugh. I think that episode just came out, actually. The last question that I was able to ask was he able to keep anything from the production? Did he take anything home?
And apparently he did. He said they still have a ton of props. The locket, the cigar box, some tools, suitcase, matchbox, wall pictures, and then on top of that, they have pages and pages of pre-production drawings and storyboards and stuff like that.
Super cool. That's super cool. Somewhere out there's a Bad Mojo, like, treasure chest. Probably now also full of roaches.
Maybe.
But what was interesting to me is that he had some questions for us. He said, did we want Bad Mojo 2? And what would we want to see as fans? And would we care if it was a mobile or PC game? So we had an interesting conversation about that, actually, me and you, and I kind of extrapolated on that. So, like, I don't think nowadays those adventure games don't hold up as well today as they did back then. Well, first off, you can actually have 3D environments in real time. You can actually have a roach moving around in real time. So if they were going to do it, they'd need to kind of rethink how the game itself would work. I don't know. I don't know how I'd feel.
You wouldn't want to see, just as a cool little throwback thing, where they kind of design it not necessarily within the confines of the constraints they were at the time, but just just make a true sequel in the same spirit of the first game.
You know what? I feel like the way they would need to do it, they'd need to either do it the same way. There's three ways I can imagine it can be done. So do you know what was that Kirby game that just came out? Kirby and the Forgotten Land is not truly 3D. So it's kind of like you're on a rail, and the camera kind of follows you around through the environment. I think that would be a cool way to do it. Where, depending on where you are, the camera kind of follows you around, and you are able to fully explore like a 3D environment. I think that would be a better way to go about doing it for a modern audience. I don't think that they should add all kinds of crazy stuff. They should keep it simple, like you're a tiny roach and you have a tiny roach body. Their game design philosophy and their attention to the world worked very well.
Right.
And they have more space to do things. I would like to... So, I feel like Franz is more important than Vinny's letting on. If he's not going to answer the question here, and he's thinking about Bad Mojo 2, then I think Franz is important in some way.
What if Bad Mojo 2 is a body swap, and you play as Franz the cat?
Ooh. Interesting. Well, he seemed very antagonistic in this game. Antagonistic. Because, the catfish talks to you. That's a big animal. And why does Franz want to kill you so damn bad?
Because he's hungry. He just wanted to eat a roach.
He's got plenty of food in the kitchen. There's just raw... I'm sure that Eddie wouldn't give a single shit if he jumped up on the counter and left his hair all over the place.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, that is it. We have delved farther into Bad Mojo than anyone has done before. We are now the premier experts of Bad Mojo on the internet. How does that feel?
You might be right. It feels pretty good.
For now, it's a little feather in my cap. All right, that's my badge. Bad Mojo expert. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for watching, and thank you for enjoying our spooktastic Halloween special.
And thank you to Michael Sommers and Vincent Carrella for taking time out of their schedules to answer our little questions.
Thank you. Couldn't find a single thing about Dan Melvin. I wanted to talk to him as a fellow 3D artist. Could not find him anywhere. So hopefully, maybe if this word gets out, maybe I can add some more stuff. Who knows? All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye.